What do you plan to do next, career-wise? Because
Well,
you entered politics late from a career in diplomacy. Are you in politics for good, or might you go back to diplomacy? You were Under Secretary General at the United Nations. You could always go back to an international job if it doesn't work for you.
I think that train has left the station. I had a very good innings, 29 years. I said to my voters on both occasions that I sought their trust that the moment I stopped making a difference, I'd step aside. As long as I could make a contribution to their welfare and as long as I could make a difference to the Indian political conversation, I'll remain.
You were very close to becoming UN Secretary General. You would have become the second youngest Secretary General, the first Indian Secretary General. I think you were 2 votes short of defeating Ban Ki-moon, and the Americans also vetoed you, good old John Bolton, who was the UN ambassador. What's your message to the American government today, who turned you down for that job?
Well, look, I don't believe really in looking back. I actually had dinner with President Bush a few months afterwards, and we got along famously. But you know, each government makes a political decision for itself, and all I can say is that they made the decision they saw fit to make at that time. And Mr. Barn has had a good 10 years. We're now looking at his successor and not worrying about what happened in the previous election.
And India has been campaigning for a permanent member seat at the Security Council. Do you think A, it will get? Do you think it will get one, and should it get one? B.
Well, it will get one inevitably, because the whole logic of the Security Council is having those countries that are indispensable, if you like, to manage the world geopolitically, economically, and so on. But when it will happen and why it will happen and how it will happen remains to be seen, because the mechanism of getting there requires the UN Charter to be amended. And that's a huge, complicated process which involves a formula that will be acceptable to 2/3 of the members of the UN and not unacceptable to the present permanent 5, whose powers will be diluted. That isn't easy to get to. So it looks like it's going to take a while to happen.
Let me finish by asking you this. What's the biggest difference for you between being in the world of the United Nations and being in the world of Indian politics?
Oh, I think there's almost nothing similar. These are 2 completely different worlds. The one thing that unites them is that they're both opportunities to make a difference to humanity. In some ways, the more immediate connection to my own fellow citizens of India has its own rewards. But otherwise, both are very, very different worlds. In the world of diplomacy, a great deal rests in what is left unsaid, whereas in the world of politics, perhaps sometimes too much is said. But at the end of the day, what you're trying to do is change lives for the better. And I think in both places, I've been able to do a little bit of that.